ReconAthlete.com podcast is brought to you by Kreitz Market. All right, Recon Athlete podcast episode number 46. Chris Sanchez, Zach Luceto, Paul Rodriguez, Snoop Daniel off camera. I mean, he might come over here in a minute. Say what's up, Snoop. All right, today we are going to do a little bit our most memorable big games, Senior Bowl, some ad-lib topics. And, I mean, I just want to start off with the ad-lib topic. I mean, what are we doing? What are y'all doing right now that there's just no football? You know, this is a weekend.
Sleeping.
First weekend. That's
Got
it.
my Xbox plugged back in.
Oh, yeah? What you playing?
I've been playing Madden. I'm going to probably get back on Halo, too. But, I mean, all the new ones about to come out soon, too. So, I'm going to have to start saving up and buy a whole new $500 system.
The new what?
Xbox. Sometime this year, the new one's coming out.
They haven't even said when it's coming out, though?
Well, that PS5's coming out, too, right? They're talking
both of them
it's
will
probably
be,
going to be
both of them
like
will
in the
be.
third quarter. Like, all the new tech comes out in the third quarter, just in time for Christmas.
Did they say how much those are going to be?
Probably for $4.99 for the PS4.
Yeah.
I mean, $5 rather.
Like 5, 6, yeah.
For real?
These things are like, they're like supercomputers, man.
Like how much memory do they got now?
Probably terabyte standard.
Mine has a terabyte. Mine's just a Xbox One, so I'm sure the new one will have even more than that.
Can you like work on those? Can you just like upgrade the memory? Do you know?
Yeah, like so the way like video games now, like you have to download the game onto your system,
right.
So it's not just like a disc that you like you put the disc in and you have the game and you take the disc out and you don't. It's not like that anymore. So like you have a certain amount of memory on your system, but you want to play all the games like you're used to. So if you run out of memory, you can just plug external hard drives in and use the memory on those.
That was gonna be my follow-up question.
But now, but the games are so big, you can't just go buy a $2 memory stick and plug it in like that. You have to find something sufficient. Yeah,
you probably gotta have like an external like terabyte hard drive.
Yeah. I see. I'm like a couple generations back. You know, I mean, I'm PS3.
What's your Atari looking?
PS3. Yeah, Atari.
Yo, Atari is dope. Have you ever played Atari?
I mean, just like the little fake ones that they would make.
So my uncle had one like back in the 80s, and it had survived to like the mid 90s, and I was able to go ahead and kind of get on like literally the joystick. There's literally a joystick and a button, and
sorry y'all.
No, it's all good.
It's not all good.
It's that watch party, right?
Yeah, it's my
everybody
watch
tune
party.
into that watch party. So, but no, it's really dope, and the games are very rudimentary. Don't get me wrong, but they're kind of challenging because you have to really gauge the depth perception because we're talking about like 8-bit, maybe even less, to kind of like jump over a pond with an alligator or something like that. You have to just time it.
Did you ever think about buying an arcade game for your house that you're
They have those at Walmart.
Dude, my buddy has one in his house.
My homegirl has one. Her dad bought one.
Which one?
It's like a fighting game, I think.
Well, my buddy has one down in South Texas. He has one like they're called emulators, and he has basically like
all the
tons and tons and tons of games that are on his arcade setup, and it's got like the 4-pad, like so you have 4 people. You could play like old school X-Men, or you could
Gauntlet?
Play probably
Gauntlet on there.
I don't know, but we play basically the new fighting games on them: Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, stuff like that.
Yeah, I saw something at Walmart, and I think Snoop actually got something for Benjamin. It was like like one of those small arcade ones.
I'm talking about like bucks. The big like put the quarter in.
Going into the arcade like back in the day.
Well, I mean, I'm a big pinball guy. Like I'm old school, you know.
You build like a pinball.
Like a pinball machine?
No, like an actual pinball.
Yeah. Oh, that's me, bro. I'm the ball for sure.
He's still
Chris built like one of the little flippers.
There you go. That sounds a little bit about right.
Yeah, every time I go to the pinballs at arcade, like they always have the prices on the pinball machines. I'm always like, man, I think I can get that.
How much are they? Like a few $100, right?
I mean, there's they can be like, from $1,000 to $5,000.
And isn't like the price set on like the theme of the game? Like if it's some like really popular movie, like let's say Terminator 2, it's going to increase in price, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would love to have a pinball machine.
You should get one and we could bring it out to our remotes. People could play it.
All right, let's do that, and hopefully we'll have another one sooner than later. All right, so no football, so video games,
Pro Bowl.
Bro, Tecmo Bowl used to be out there too, man. He used to dig on that Nintendo like back in the day.
Yeah,
that Tecmo Bowl.
Pro Bowl Skills Challenge.
Yeah.
That was it. That's where it was.
I saw that dodgeball you was talking about.
Did you see the?
Yeah. Jump in, Snoop.
Yeah, make sure.
What?
Joe Montana football was the first football game that actually said a player's name, and I thought it was so cool. It was like, Joe Montana drops back. But he only said Joe Montana's name. And lastly, Double Dribble on Nintendo.
Yes.
It tried to talk. Instead of saying pushing foul, it said push well. I remember that.
Oh, it was French.
Is it French? I don't know. But that's it. Anyway, all right.
Hey, real quick, everybody, put a comment down below if y'all would be interested in a '90s pop culture podcast. Let us know. Just we're thinking about it.
Yeah. Zach, would you be down for that? I mean, 90s pop culture. Do you know?
He was there half the decade.
Yeah. I was born in '94.
Do you remember the 90s?
So the turn of the century, I was 6.
That's like me in the '80s. They're like, "Do you remember the '80s?" I was like, I was 6 in 1990. So no.
So no real competitive football right now. I mean, Pro Bowl. We're going to talk a little bit of the Senior Bowl here in a minute. So video games, sleeping, and
watching the Pro Bowl Skills Challenge.
And the dodgeball games.
Okay. So first off, Lamar Jackson, so there was 2 passing ones.
Yeah.
There was one that was like they had to throw the targets and it was just quarterbacks, and they had like a new one this year where it was a quarterbacks throwing at these cheese looking things. Yeah,
those circles.
And a DB standing in front of it trying to knock him down. And when it got to Lamar Jackson's turn on the second one, after he had already put up 2 total points in the first one, he looked like he didn't even want to do it. Oh, yeah. Like he just looking at him was bad. Same with
Trubisky.
No, Trubisky wasn't there.
Are you sure? Because I saw that one where he was. You're not talking about the circles, are you?
Yeah, I am.
With the DBs.
Yeah.
Trubisky was there.
No, it was Lamar and
Russell Wilson.
It was Lamar, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, and Deshaun Watson.
It was Cousins.
Cousins, yeah.
Cousins.
But
morning coffee, yeah.
But so he looked real out of place, and then Cordell Patterson was in like the hands challenge.
Uh-huh.
He don't even have hands.
No, he doesn't.
He just got wheels.
That's like his whole thing is like he's in the Pro Bowl as a kick returner, and he looked bad on the catching one.
Yeah,
like they were throwing balls like 2-handed catch right at him. He was like,
but he really wasn't that great of a receiver.
That's why
he could return the ball for everything, but like catching, no, he faded out. I know he for sure faded out of Minnesota with the receiving core because he just couldn't get the job done. But
yeah, but I thought it was weird that they chose him for that because he's literally in the Pro Bowl as a returner. Like that's what he's listed
maybe
as.
He's an alternate, and whoever was supposed to be there is like playing in the Super Bowl.
It was Devontae Adams, or it was Cordell Patterson and then Devontae Adams for the NFC. And like by the time Devontae Adams even got to go, like it had already been a whole bunch of time. And then the AFC was Mark Andrews and the dude for the Ravens.
Yeah.
And then Jarvis Landry. But like those are 2 like pass catchers.
Yeah.
So like they just blew it out of the water. I thought that was weird. And then they had that little relay race. Mm-hmm. And there was a point where it's like the AFC led pretty much the whole time, but there was a point where it was pretty close. And they had to push these heavy bags. Like you push one heavy bag, and then it hits another heavy bag, and you push them both, and then it hits another one, and you push all 3. And it was like a D lineman against Jalen Smith, and Jalen Smith like couldn't push it. Like he wasn't strong enough. Like it just shows them both. It shows both guys like this, and the first guy pushes it, and he just goes off the screen, and Jalen Smith is just.
I wonder how much they weighed. I wonder if they were like 150 or like 200 pounds apiece. Because I can see, that's like almost 600 pounds. You put those together. Mm-hmm. Oh, lineman, that ain't nothing.
But still, like it was a bad look.
Really?
To me,
was just stuck.
To me, it's like they didn't even. Right. So to me, it's like they didn't even like practice at all. Like, hey, come check this out.
They probably just were like sandlot picking. Like, let me take that guy. Let me take that guy. Let me take that guy.
Yeah. But at least like go out there. If you're going to compete like on television,
like, don't you want to know you could do it?
Yeah. Like, let me go out there and see if I can even push these things.
Right. Before I embarrass myself on TV.
On national television. But, I don't know. Maybe these dudes, they're out there having a good time. It's the Pro Bowl. All these dudes, they're off season. You know, they're really out there for the vacation
for sure.
Really, you know. So I mean, I think the skills challenge is nice. You know, because I mean the game itself.
It's more exciting than the game.
Yeah, the game itself is like everybody's just kind of like half speed, if even half speed
until the end. They're like, let me get this check so I can pay for everybody that I brought here.
Yeah. Do they get paid like that?
Yeah. Well, it's like 50. I think the winner gets a certain amount, the loser gets a certain amount. But if you're the winner and you brought friends and family, like you want to offset that cost that you just incurred by bringing, all your people out. So I would think they would want to have the bigger check and try to win at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. These NFL guys. I mean, they got plenty of money, right?
I think could it be a tax write-off? Do you know?
Maybe. I don't know. It is tax season.
Yeah, I saw a photo of the Dallas Cowboys who made the Pro Bowl.
Yeah,
and it was Tyron Smith, Frederick, Jalen Smith, and
Zeke.
No. This one Zeke went in this photo.
Oh.
But it was Amari Cooper, and it's like Smith smiles, Frederick smiles, Jalen Smith smiles, and Amari Cooper's just like stone faced. Like he could totally tell he just didn't want to be there. And it was just like, dang, bro, like, are you mad about the contract? Are you mad about being wherever you are?
Oh, maybe he was on something.
No, he looked pissed, bro. It's like if you maybe like everybody else was on something and he wasn't. That's what it looked like.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you never know, man. People take pictures differently. You know, maybe he's just trying to look hard, you know.
Man, you're from Miami. You don't got to look hard.
Yeah.
And just watching that skills challenge, like all the events, I hate listening to Russell Wilson talk.
What do you, like? How so?
He's just so like
too positive.
No, the stuff he says, like he's so lame. He's so lame. Like that's the word. Like
he's a square.
Lame.
Like
yes. Like
well,
they were about to go. They were about to go on the precision passing one, and it was him versus Deshaun Watson, and the lady was like, what are your thoughts? And he was like, well, Deshaun Watson's good in the fourth quarter, so I got to be ready. I was like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, and then he kept putting on these. It was dark, like it was like a cloudy day, and he kept putting on these big ass sunglasses.
Yeah,
I was like, dude, you don't even look cool, man. Like,
he was trying.
He was trying so hard.
You're right about that.
Because he was like the most like outspoken of all the quarterbacks there. Like everyone participating. Like Kirk Cousins doesn't really talk like that. Like. Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson don't really talk like that. So Russell Wilson kind of took it upon himself to be like the voice of the quarterbacks. He's so lame, man.
It wasn't good.
No, I hate it. But I mean, I'm like that with him all the time. Like,
yeah.
Anytime he talks, like it makes me uncomfortable almost.
Like you think it's fake, like a front?
I don't know. I almost hope it is. Like
I don't think it is. I really don't. I mean, he's just like I think he has like. Super down to earth. I think he's a square. I mean, he's a nerd.
I mean,
it's like a football nerd.
Yeah. I mean, ain't nothing wrong with that, but yeah. I mean,
it's like when Andrew Luck would talk.
It's not entertaining.
Yeah, that's
true. That's the issue.
Yeah.
That's the issue. It's not like Recon Athlete podcast. Episode number 46, Chris Sanchez, Zach Luceto, Paul Rodriguez, Snoop Daniel over there on the couch.
Man, we're on 46.
Yeah, we're on 46, dog. Wow. We're talking a little bit about what we've been doing without any competitive football. Now let's get into the Senior Bowl because that is competitive football. We talk about Pro Bowl and the skills challenges. The skills challenges is something that leads up to the Pro Bowl. For the Senior Bowl, it's the practices.
Yeah,
and that's where a lot of these players in the Senior Bowl rosters really can shine. The game itself is, I think it's secondary to the practices as far as the scouts go
and like the interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think. Because it's similar to the Pro Bowl where nobody wants to go out there and get hurt or hurt somebody else. So I think the practices is where, a lot of the scouting gets done, and you've got the two coaching staffs, one from Detroit, one from Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. It's like, how did they make that pick? I mean,
because they're both horrible and they need picks to improve their rosters.
They're the team that's going to have the most college players on it next year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, are they the two worst teams, and do they always pick the coaching staffs like that? I mean,
I don't know. I think it's just
there's probably some criteria,
like who wants to take it, also, and exactly like who wants to take it.
Yeah,
because I remember a couple years ago, Dallas was coaching in the Senior Bowl. It was, of course, it was Jason Garrett's staff, but I don't think they were as bad as they were this year. But they were close.
Yeah, Yeah. So Senior Bowl, it does have some Longhorn players. Paul, you mentioned them earlier before we came on air.
Yeah.
Who they got out there?
Duvernay is playing out there for, I believe, the South team, and so is Colin Johnson. And, you know, I know Zach is really big on those players. And, you know, we were talking about how last year Colin Johnson was a pretty high pick. Do you think his season helped him out with that more, especially with the big victory in the Alamo Bowl? Or do you think because they were not a prolific passing offense that kind of like diminish his chances, and now he really needs to shine in the Senior Bowl to kind of get those big looks at possibly a second or high third round pick?
I mean, I think in my opinion, if you're gonna be a high pick and you come back and don't wow, your stock is gonna at least drop a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I think for him, the reason that his stock is going to drop is unless he has like an incredible Senior Bowl, like incredible practices and like puts up like 17 touchdowns in the game or something. I think what really hurt him is the injuries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we talked about it on the podcast, like maybe he kind of milked those injuries because there was no point in him playing. Mm-hmm. But I think just him missing time at all after missing time last year too, because you almost want you kind of want to come back to show you're not injury prone. You're not like that's not your wave. But for him to come back and miss even more time, I think that is what hurts him more than the lack of performance.
And I think it's almost too like because of the injuries and because how this year he had like, I wouldn't say a down season, but probably similar to what he had last year. He's having to work harder, and I think especially he's going to have a big game today. The dude's a freak athlete. We all know that, and he's a huge dude at 6'5", probably over 6'5", and moving forward, he's going to have to wow today. He's going to have to wow at his UT Pro Day. And he's probably, if he gets invited to the Combine, which I think he should.
I think they both will.
I mean, yeah, for sure. I think they need to, like, wow with their measurables. And he could be one of those cases where he's a dark horse now. I think he's graded as a second-round receiver. If he wows, he could easily climb into the first round because we've seen him make spectacular catches for the Longhorns.
He's got the tangibles for it, too.
And
height and weight.
He is. Yeah. And I think coming back, that shows the intangibles that he has of being a team player. And so moving forward, I think Colin Johnson could be a huge dark horse for, you know, a team probably like the Patriots who are going to pick later on who need a big-time receiver, someone similar to like Randy Moss.
A replacement for N'Keal Harry.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. But a big body receiver who's got the wingspan and, you know, someone who they could build around with the receiving core who need big-time specialty players like receivers.
Yeah. And I think I forgot what I was going to say. Man, but I think in the Pro Bowl, or not the Pro Bowl.
Senior Bowl.
The Senior Bowl, the actual game, kind of how you were talking about it, I think the game could more hurt you than help you.
Yeah.
Like I think you just have to go into the game and not mess up. Like if you're a defensive end, like you almost don't have to bust it for sacks. It's just don't get pancaked and don't get pushed around. If you're a quarterback, just don't turn the ball over. Because I mean we've seen Senior Bowls past where we've had quarterbacks that were pretty like well talked about going to the Senior Bowl and throw a bunch of interceptions, and all that does is give the media something to talk about and coaches something to reevaluate. And I remember what I was going to say about Colin Johnson. I think what happened to him going from last year to this year is he lost a guaranteed roster spot. Mm-hmm. I think last year he was going to be drafted high enough where you could pretty much be injured going into camp and know you'll have a spot and significant playing time once the season comes around. And I think now he's going to have to battle to get drafted as high as I think he wants, and we as Longhorn fans think he should get drafted. And then once that happens, he's going to have to battle when he gets into camp. I mean, just for playing time in a roster spot. I think we're going to have to maybe he's a little too big, but I think we're going to be seeing Colin Johnson do some things that we've never seen before in terms of special teams and things like that, just because his draft stock probably significantly fell, I think.
Something that you mentioned, and it kind of caught my eye, and I was thinking to myself, I was looking at the rosters, especially the quarterback positions, and I'm curious if they did this on purpose, because you talked about how quarterbacks need to protect the ball, especially in games like this at the Senior Bowl. Not only is Jalen Hurts going to be the quarterback for the South team, but so is Justin Herbert, and they've kind of stacked two really good, high-profile quarterbacks who did very well in their college years, but now going to the NFL, you kind of think to yourself, as a coach looking in on this, maybe we're going to have these two guys compete because maybe we'll get a look of what their intangibles are like whenever they go into the NFL and compete for possibly a starting position or a backup role, which I think is going to be in their futures 100%. They could possibly move up depending on how things move out, but we haven't seen Jalen Hurts throw dimes and be consistent with big time throws, but we have seen Justin Herbert do that, and I'm kind of curious to see if maybe those coaches will say, let's put some pressure on Hurts because we know the dude's a baller. We know he can perform in high stressful situations. Going back to Alabama, now with that being said, do you see Jalen Hurts being the bigger prospect coming out of this Senior Bowl, or would Herbert
between those
him
two?
and Herbert?
And I think the Senior Bowl did a really good job of balancing these two quarterback rosters in terms of what the quarterbacks are trying to do.
That's a great point.
So we talked about just a second ago how as a quarterback you're just trying not to turn the ball over.
Yeah.
That stands true for a Justin Herbert. Mm-hmm. That doesn't necessarily stand true for a Jalen Hurts or Steven Montez, who's playing the quarterback from Colorado.
Right.
Both of those guys are going to this Senior Bowl trying to prove something. Hurts trying to prove that I can do more than just run the ball. Right. I can make good decisions. I'm more accurate than I seem to be this season. I can protect the ball when I do run. Whereas Justin Herbert, he's a top 15 pick.
Mm-hmm. You think so?
I think so. I think he's top 3 quarterbacks in this draft class. And whereas he's already solidified the only thing the combine is going to make his draft stock better than the Senior Bowl is.
I agree.
So he just has to go and not mess up. And I think receivers like Colin Johnson and Devin Duvernay are very good for him because they're both very sure-handed. So I think that helps a lot. And I do think for Colin Johnson as well, the Hurts quarterback being on there helps him a lot because a lot of the big plays that we saw Colin Johnson made is off of poorly thrown balls because his catch radius is so big. And then going to the East roster, and that's why I said I think their rosters are very well put together because it's the same thing. We have Anthony Gordon from Washington State, mm-hmm. Jordan Love, and Shea Patterson. Jordan Love has been rated as a first-round quarterback.
He's gotten a lot of love this week. No pun intended.
You did that on purpose.
I didn't.
So I think he's in a similar role as Justin Herbert, where he has the frame, he has the tape, he has the clout pretty much mm-hmm. to solidify where he's probably going to go in the draft. So he just kind of needs to even out. Shea Patterson is in a very similar position as Jalen Hurts.
Right, exactly.
Where their seasons were very lackluster in terms of the hype that was built up around them. And Anthony Gordon is kind of that wild card, like the Montez kid, where he wowed in college, but is that because of the competition? Is that because of the system? What is that? So those guys want to go into the Senior Bowl and make the most of every single rep they get to kind of say they're more than just the hype. So I think these rosters in terms of quarterbacks, these quarterback rooms, I guess, mm-hmm. are very well put together in terms of just balancing out the needs of the quarterbacks.
All right, so the Senior Bowl is today, 1:30 on NFL Network, and this is going to be at the Ladd Peoples Stadium in Mobile, Alabama. I'm on the website right now,
and buy some tickets.
And the tickets are. You see how much the tickets are?
No, probably like $10.
Yeah, they're $30, $20, and $10. $30, $20, and $10.
Yeah, you turn that on, and you'll see why.
But I mean, and I think you'll
see why it's in the Ladd Peoples Stadium or whatever.
Yeah, I think,
that is.
And I think one of the interesting things, about the Senior Bowl too is like the practices, but you can go on YouTube, after you go to Recon Athlete's page, of course,
for sure,
and you can find highlights from each practice day.
Yes,
and I think you can learn a lot about these and about these players. And what I find most interesting is about the Senior Bowl is there are other all-star games,
mm-hmm.
The East-West game, and they're not necessarily seniors.
The Recon Athlete Bowl,
right?
Hey, that could be something in the future, maybe right. 707. Just saying.
But the Senior Bowl seems to be the one that garners the most attention, the one that carries the most weight, and that a lot of the the scouts and NFL coaches go to, and I find that interesting, just because
Isn't it put on by NFLPA? Isn't it put on by the NFL?
Yeah, and I find that interesting because it is just senior centric. There's not like underclassmen involved in this, and I think that says a lot about the maturity level. A lot of these NFL scouts and coaches and GMs, they want that maturity level. Because you coming in the NFL from college, if you're coming in at 20, 21 years old, you might not be as mature if you're 22, 23. Just those couple of years makes a lot of difference, especially when you're, Zach's not that far away from being 20, 21. What are you, 24, 25?
Yeah.
You could probably tell the difference between your 25-year-old Zach and 21-year-old Zach.
Right.
So there is a big difference in maturity level for these seniors. And, like Zach said, if you turn on the NFL Network today at 1:30, you're not going to see a whole lot. But you can go on YouTube and check out the practices. And one thing I think y'all mentioned earlier before we move on is the was it long snappers?
Yeah, there's like 6 of them on each roster.
And I had a thought about that.
Well, what?
What is your thought, Coffee Bean?
Hey man, I dig me some coffee. So any of you coffee people out there want to do some sponsorship, hit us up at Recon Athlete in the DM. So anyways, I was thinking the long snapper. I was kind of thinking to myself, man, Dallas has had a long snapper there, number 91. Nobody knows his name because it's not pertinent, but it is a very valuable and important position.
Look up his name, Chris. Look up his name. It is pertinent.
And so getting back to it, I'm thinking, well, these people, these individuals who are in these roles, they just stay there for years, for decades, probably almost. And it's like maybe the NFLPA looked at the rosters of the NFL across the board and they're like, maybe it's time to bring some new individuals in and get a really good look at if there's some talented long snappers, because you got to think about it. Anytime there's a punt, that's an important position. Anytime there's an extra point or a field goal, that's a valuable position because that could really dictate how that kick is going to go, either for a punt or through the uprights. And so I think that's what I'm looking at is probably these guys getting a lot older and they just want to get some new blood in the system, maybe to reinvigorate that position.
Yeah, the only one that's actually on the South team, Blake Ferguson of LSU is the only one that's listed as a long snapper. But
he's only got one? They've only got one?
That's what it says. But I'm sure it's like, there might be listed as a guard or a lineman or something like that, but they're actually like a long snapper.
Well, I think too. Actually, I might have read that one wrong. Actually, what is DS?
That should be deep snapper,
right?
Yeah.
So there's only one DS on that list.
S is LS.
It's a volleyball defensive specialist. But
that's probably what that is.
But I think. In terms of this game, it's very, very similar to the high school All-American games.
Yeah.
The what was formerly known as the Army All-American game, and now in the Under Armour All-American game, where a lot of the recruiting, a lot of the scouting does get done at the practices. It does get done at the 7-on-7 tournament that they have there, and then the game is more kind of more for fun in high school than the Senior Bowl is. But I think those are very good. The way to look at the Senior Bowl is very similar to those games. But I did want to ask you guys, in terms of something that you're going to turn on the TV and see, did y'all see Jalen Hurts is going to be wearing a helmet that's half Alabama, half OU?
Yeah, I had mixed feelings about that. Mixed feelings. Go ahead.
Let me finish first. He never liked being at OU. He never was a part of that culture. He never really seemed like he was really even that much into the team atmosphere there. Because every time he was even in an interview, he asked about the Red River Shootout, asked about these rivalry games. He was like, "Man, I played in the SEC. I played in SEC games." So he was never really. If it was up to him, I think his helmet would have just been Alabama. Honestly, I think if they would have asked him that, and Lincoln Riley would have said like, "Look, we're not offended," I think he would have done it. But I don't really like it. I think in the Senior Bowl, you're representing the school that you're coming from. If you're Alabama through and through, you shouldn't have left. If you went to Oklahoma, you're going to play at Oklahoma. I know. Realistically, he was going to Oklahoma in hopes of turning his kind of recruiting around or whatever. But But I just don't like the optics of that, and kind of looking into it in terms of, I think, what it really means for Jalen Hurts. I think that's kind of disrespectful to Oklahoma.
I think it's also, too, that, I agree with the statement that you said that he really wasn't, vested being at Oklahoma and their traditions. But getting back to it, I kind of watched the press conference where they made the announcement and had the display for the helmet. And I thought it, very, very partisan, because it's my feeling that, all these seniors are going to represent themselves and their brand. They're just kind of wearing the helmet to the school that they kind of played for. And at this time, you're making it about Alabama and OU rather than making it about the athlete. And that was something that I kind of looked at whenever I saw Jalen Hurts' response. He kind of looked at the helmet and kind of looked at somebody in the distance, probably a family member, his father, and kind of just
probably
had like
Lincoln Riley.
Maybe it had wide-eyed and kind of was just like kind of surprised and taken back, like, they really did this for me, like, for what? So
you don't think it was his idea?
I don't think so at all. I think he really had this surprised look. If you go back at the clip, you probably check it out on YouTube or something and look at his facial response. And to me, he was like in disbelief. But
he kind of looks
look.
like that all the time, though.
maybe. But to me, I just was taking body language and facial expressions, and I was just like, he was like, "Why did y'all do this?"
Yeah.
I'm here representing Jalen Hurts, not Alabama and Oklahoma.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I thought was just really, and I didn't like it personally.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I think, honestly, like, thinking back, like, ever since he left Alabama, his kind of demeanor, and anytime it shows him on any sort of camera, is just very uninterested looking. Like, you saw him in Alabama when he was actually playing in games, where he was like yelling and hyped up and stuff. And every time he was in Oklahoma, he was just, very uninterested. I can't think of any time that he was excited looking this whole season.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think when I think about Jalen Hurts and watching him play, and when they show him on the sidelines, he was just kind of like you said, uninterested and just kind of there, because I feel like he felt slighted by Alabama. I mean, he wanted to play there. That's where he wanted to
but he wasn't
win a
good
national
enough.
championship.
He wasn't good enough. Bottom line.
That's true. But it's still, it's still not going to make his, his personal feelings any different. So
you want to know why he looked disconnected? You want to look like nothing he wasn't interested? It's because those Alabama checks were a lot bigger than those Oklahoma checks, allegedly.
You know what? Okay, so first of all, I want to finish on the Senior Bowl thing, unless there's something else you want to talk about in terms of it. I think now, in terms of like social media and like making spectacle of things, I think the Senior Bowl doing this for Jalen Hurts potentially opens up a can of worms for their, like, the people that have to deal with the players in terms of these things, because there's so many transfer kids. There's so many kids that have played at multiple universities that are going to be playing in these Senior Bowls this year and for years to come. And I guarantee you 3 out of 5 of them are going to ask, like, can I get that on my helmet?
Right.
Like we all had to Jalen Hurts back in 2020. So I think that's going to be kind of a pain for them. And they either did that to themselves or did that to themselves by agreeing to Jalen Hurts' request. But we're talking about getting bags and playing the Senior Bowl and transferring and stuff like that. I think so people always talk about paying recruits, and when you talk about paying recruits, who are the recruits that you're paying most of the time? They're high school recruits, right? I think we're starting to see kind of a new wave of this, especially in terms of the running back position, because whenever Todd Gurley got paid and then had that next season where he was hurt and didn't play much and didn't perform, that completely changed the narrative on the running back position. It kind of led to the Le'Veon Bell situation, led to the Melvin Gordon situation, where people are starting to realize that there's no longevity in that position.
Yeah.
Your first contract is going to be your big contract, and after that, your value declines. So why is it that Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, Chuba Hubbard are coming back to play their senior seasons? If that has been the narrative in the media, you ask any football person that over the past probably 3 or 4 years, they will tell you that hands down. They will tell you if when their running back leaves college, they'll say, yeah, that makes sense because he needs to get paid now before he puts 200 something more carries on his body going into the NFL. So I think it's very, very surprising that we're seeing these running backs come back for their senior season. I think we're starting to see more of an emphasis put on the recruiting of getting players to stay. And I think that's why a lot of people were kind of surprised, especially SEC Southern people, that Tua did declare for the draft, because I think they could have seen it very easily. Alabama saying, "Hey, we'll give you X amount of money if you come play one more year," and they could see that. So whenever he potentially declined that and played and went to the NFL, I think people were surprised, because it really makes no sense. Travis Etienne was probably the most well-rounded back coming out of the draft.
That's fair.
Chuba Hubbard is statistically the best running back coming out of the draft. Najee Harris is the best specimen in that position coming out of the draft. Those potentially all could have been first-round picks easily. Like, I think you could make an argument for every one of those. And for them to say no to that, to come play their senior season, I think potentially we have all of these guys coming back and coming back to really loaded rosters, I think, which could also play a big factor in it. Yeah. But Najee Harris, you don't have a quarterback. Your quarterback is named Mac. Like, I think we're going to start to see more players come back for their senior year, because I think in terms of potentially money exchanging hands, we're starting to see more of an emphasis on that.
And do you think that's kind of contributing back to how there's been this huge movement and the NCAA already approving student athletes that could make names off their names and likeness? Do you think potentially that's going on now? Is that why they're coming back? Or do you think that this is purely a move by the universities to incentivize these student athletes to stay with the big roster, and they're selling it, like you said, they're coming back to loaded rosters? You're gonna have,
or they're selling it selling.
You're gonna be the big fish in the pond. You don't need to go to the NFL quite yet. The money's gonna be there when you get there, and you'll only increase your draft stock. And all you got to do is go take out a insurance policy, and you can come back and you'll be fine. But you're weighing a lot, because I look at a lot of injuries that have gone on, like Marcus Lattimore, who tore up his knee, or going back to 2002 with Clint Portis. With Clint Portis in Miami, we're talking about guys that are tearing up their knees.
But exactly. So why would you put anything else above that if your university isn't? If people from your university aren't giving you,
honestly, guys, I think it's because the NFL doesn't value the running backs very much.
But so as a college student, Chris, if you were a college student 30 years ago, for your university, for Paul, the owner of the biggest car dealership in Alabama, the biggest chain of car dealerships in Alabama Roll Tide through and through, to come to you and say, look, the NFL doesn't value your position. The money that you're going to make is not in the long term. If you stay for your senior year, I'll give you the money that you're potentially missing out on. I'll give it to you now up front.
Yeah, because
to help your family, the way
the NFL set it up, rookie contracts are minuscule.
Very much so.
So, this is a great point, Paul.
The other thing too is, this year, the CBA and the NFL ends. And maybe to that fact, these recruiters at these universities are saying, hey, stay the big fish in the pond one more year. Stay on the loaded roster, compete for a national championship, and make a run at the Heisman. Let the CBA and the NFL hash out their deals.
Because you don't know what you're going into.
Because you don't know what you're going to get going into 2021. And so that could be something that also is they're taking into consideration, and they're saying, hey, man, I got it made in the shade. I probably already graduated. I'm taking one class in pottery making, and I go to practice and watch film and eat and sleep, and that's it. that's not a bad deal. And I know you're not making the big bucks right now, but I'm pretty sure you're making something as maybe a parking lot attendant.
And you're making also you're also finishing your degree and getting getting a piece of paper,
finishing a master's
that will allow you to be placed into a job potentially if the NFL doesn't work out.
Right.
If similar to Vince Young. I mean, he had a job with the University of Texas. I mean, he lost it, but I'm sure he had a pretty healthy salary. Mm-hmm. And if you stay at a university, it could be some law firm or some like you said, car dealership where you go and sell cars for somebody, or insurance company. So potentially there's like, hey, you stay and get your bachelor's degree. If NFL doesn't work out, we got a job for you.
You got a home here.
You got a home here. And there's a lot of incentives, especially for the running back position, because we talk about Zeke Elliott is probably top 2, 3, maybe even the best running back in the NFL, and we saw how difficult it was just for him to get paid. But
he looks like a genius now, and he kind of gave the roadmap for all of the young running backs coming in, like Saquon, who needs to get his deal next. He gave the blueprint. I went up against the biggest miser owner in the NFL, and I got my money from the running back position. This is how you do it,
right? Exactly.
And I think what we're also seeing now in college, which potentially next year, which is different from this year especially, is I think colleges are starting to put an emphasis on having seniors on their roster. Mm-hmm. And which I think we're seeing the Trevor Lawrences, we're seeing the Justin Fields, we're seeing all of these underclassmen be the focal points of these teams, which in the past we would say, but they have so-and-so as the senior leader of their team. They have so-and-so as the senior leader of their team. They have Tim Tebow in the locker room hyping them up, things like that. We're not seeing that anymore because everyone is just getting the bag as soon as they can. Mm-hmm. But they're just dipping out as soon as their draft stock hits the line that they put on their vision board. Mm-hmm. in their room, they're out. So I think colleges are realizing if this trend continues, we're never going to have seniors on our team. We're never going to have impactful seniors on our team. So what can we do to change that? And Booster A and Booster B are saying, I think we could help out a little bit.
Yeah. Recon Athlete, where all the college football players are getting paid, according to us.
I bet. I would bet. When Recon Athlete makes it big time, Recon Athlete gonna start sliding some money to some players.
That is not true.
No, it's true.
When it all becomes legal, then we'll talk about
it. Possibly, man. Speaking of stuff like that, Zach. Hey, I got something for you.
I know, right?
I got something for you, brother.
Next year,
that's why you came. That's why you came here
next
today.
year.
You've been good to the family.
You've been good to the family, sir.
I thought this was
look down.
No.
Look down. Put it down.
Yeah.
I thought this was like an act. I thought we were acting out the seniors.
Look down.
I seen it.
You see it?
Okay.
Yeah. This is you're like a running back.
Yeah, I know, right?
Back
I was going to say, hey, next year 1,000 yards. I got you. I got 1,000 yards for Recon Athlete.
You good?
I'm good.
All right, man. So Recon Athlete episode 46. Zach getting paid. Running backs.
Zach getting paid. Running backs getting paid.
Under contract.
We're paying under the table just like it is.
Just like it is. Just like we do. All right, episode 46. Before we get out of here, man, we just spent 45 minutes talking about the Senior Bowl.
Hey, I got
That's what's up.
I got potentially the last topic.
All right, go ahead.
Unless there's something that we really need.
We were going to talk about the most memorable big game, but we can talk about.
We're entering a real low period, so we're gonna have to save some.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Of these topics. Did you guys watch the Aaron Hernandez documentary?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thoughts.
Oh man,
there was a lot going on there.
There was a lot going on.
And I'm not sure what parts to believe. I know that his lawyers came out and said that a lot of the story is bogus. This is just
which lawyers? Baez.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
The headline
we need to put Baez on retainer. That's all I know.
I don't know.
For real.
I don't know if we can afford him, but yeah, we'll look into it.
Yeah. but yeah, I mean, it was an interesting story. You know, and I think at the end, I mean, a lot of it in the episode 3 was about CTE, right? Mm-hmm. You know, about the concussion,
which I thought was weird that they didn't talk about that at all until 3/4 through episode 3.
That's because the NFL said they could only talk about it in that last hour.
Hey, sorry, Chris. Continue.
No, but I'm just saying, like, well, I was just saying the CTE part, and I think I can't remember his name, but he was one of the players that they were interviewing throughout the documentary. He played with the Patriots, and he actually kind of like thought the whole CTE argument was bogus. You know, like he was kind of putting it out there, like, man, like he's like, you know how many players go through concussions and potentially have CTE. You're talking about thousands of former NFL players and NFL players that are current that have these injuries and possible symptoms, but they don't go around killing nobody. And that was his point, you know. And I was just like, man. And it was kind of hard to hear because, you know, especially when you get to, I mean, it's not like, you know, I didn't feel sorry for Aaron Hernandez in any way, but, you know, I do feel sorry for those individuals that might suffer from CTE and the effects of it. And for this guy who he said, I've got a bunch of concussions, you know, I've got concussions through my whole career. He said, but I'm not using that as an excuse. And I think that was kind of a reality check on the whole CTE thing. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, there's not weight into it that's going to, you know, potentially, you know, harm somebody's mental makeup. I mean, I'm sure it's for some people it's going to change the way they think, their decision-making skills. I mean, everybody's different. Everybody reacts to different situations. And, you know, I just thought it was a interesting take on the whole CTE thing because he was like, you know, I'm not putting any weight on that CTE thing when it comes to Aaron Hernandez and other players that might use this as an excuse. And I was just like, man, and that was pretty rough. It was rough.
That was the argument that was the opposite argument of what his lawyer was saying. Mm-hmm. The lawyer was saying that Aaron Hernandez's case had nothing to do with his homosexuality and everything to do with his upbringing in the CTE. And even in the documentary, when it talked about Junior Seau and it showed his brain in comparison to when it showed Aaron Hernandez's brain was significantly different. Aaron Hernandez's brain, I mean, I wonder what the stats are on it and like the research is. I feel like that could have been one of the worst cases in.
Yeah, and that's what that neurologist was saying, and that she said it was probably the worst one that she'd seen. You know, actually was the worst one, and he was 27 years old
for his age.
Until they look at Antonio Brown's.
So right. I want to address that what that New England Patriot player was talking about, and I would be very careful to put a blanket statement on CTE and how it's attributed to individuals' behavior, no matter what age. And right. The reason I say that is because CTE is going to be a case-by-case situation that needs to be reviewed. Well, why? Well, because everybody's chemical makeup and neuro firing in their brain is different. Mm-hmm. So you can't judge one by the other. It has to be taken on an individual basis. That's the first part. Now, the second part you asked about, what are my thoughts? Well, watching the documentary and kind of watching it in pieces, in my opinion, I believe the father of the family is a very important role in the household.
In the whole story.
And in this whole story, I believe that growing up in a upper middle class family, having a very alpha, hard nosed, old school type of father that Aaron Hernandez had, you know, he had maybe some things go on that he witnessed in his family home that he was unsure about. He was uncomfortable with, obviously. Mm-hmm. And he ended up repeating a lot of those behaviors, just not with his household. He did it externally. Well, what's the point? The point is that when his father passed and he no longer had a role model to control all of that energy, and that's the word I want to use. You can call it anger, you can call it charisma, you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it energy. There was no one to put structure around it. And that, to me, was the catalyst for the downfall, because he went and started hanging around other pieces of his family that he probably shouldn't have been hanging out with, and that, in my opinion, totally increased the chances for him to go down a path that he eventually wound up going down, and which was very tragic. I have no sympathy or empathy for the man for what his behavior was, but at the same time, I can identify, in my opinion, what the trigger was for him to behave that way.
I do think, but that kind of goes to the whole nature versus nurture argument as well, which is like centuries old argument. But I do think just his family life was messed up from the jump, from the things that DJ, his brother, said happened to him as a kid, from the death of his father, the unexpected death of his father, I think, which plays a big role in it as well, from the way that his mother handled everything after that happened. Yeah. And I mean, just hearing, I think what was interesting to follow was, granted at times the documentary wasn't very chronological, which was my argument with my only like negative critique of that documentary.
Yeah, they kind of went back and forth. Yeah.
Right. It was just listening to how the phone calls changed, the phone calls that were recorded from his time in jail, just from the beginning of the documentary when he was calling his wife and talking to his child and calling the Pouncey brothers and things like that, to the phone call with his mom where he was basically saying, like, you did this to me. Yeah. Like, this is your fault. Yeah. So, and I think that does hold weight. I do think, I think he was right almost in saying, like, Mom, like, you, and I think you, meaning y'all, did this to me. You and Dad, did this to me. And one of the we talked about this at work, and one of the things my boss said is where was his brother during all of this?
Great question.
Like, where was his older role model brother during all of that? Did he never come and check on him? Did he never like have his back during all of this? Because the only time we ever saw his brother was when he was promoting his book. Was the only time we saw his brother. And as I'm saying this, as I'm saying role model brother, I wonder if these things had already clicked in Aaron Hernandez's head, and he got to a point where he realized, I don't look up to you anymore. Like, you're at UConn. I'm winning national championships at the University of Florida. Yeah. What can you tell me? Like, what do I look up to you for? Because when I was watching it and they had that double homicide that he was potentially connected to, where then they said like 2 months later or something he got that $40 million extension, and I was watching with my girl. I was telling her, I was like, just think like the paranoia you must have after doing this and not getting caught. Just the paranoia you must have every day, and to be experiencing that and going to work the next day and them saying, we love everything you've been doing. Great teammate, great player. We want to extend your contract and give you $40 million. He must have felt so untouchable after that. Because that paranoia is gone. Yeah. Because you're going from that to getting rewarded. You're like, oh, well, I'm good. So he probably, after that point especially, there was nothing that anybody could tell him to save him from the path that he was.
He was going down that path. So, Paul?
My final thoughts about Aaron Hernandez is that he was a great football player, horrible human being. And his ability to compartmentalize the situations that he was in, I think allowed him to not feel any paranoia. And after locking up the highest deal for a tight end at the time with that $40 million, I think really proved to him that he was untouchable and that there was nothing that really could impact him in an adverse way. Unfortunately, he kept living the lifestyle, or living a double lifestyle, and it eventually caught up to him. but I have mixed feelings about it. But my feelings in conclusion with it would be learn from this as an event for everybody to view. Learn from it. Be who you are. Don't apologize for who you are, and own your behavior. If you believe you need help, go get help. If you don't and you think you can handle it on your own, talk to somebody, because it looked like at the end, where were Aaron Hernandez's friends in all of this? Where were his real friends?
I mean, at that point, at the point where he's convicted of, murdering Lloyd. I mean, everybody just.
But here's my point.
Nobody wants anything to do with it, which I completely understand.
The accountability. Your friends give you accountability. If I'm messing up, you're going to tell me something. If I'm messing up, I know you'll tell me something. If I was messing up on a player's name.
Brady Quinn, defensive end for the Cowboys.
And so my point is that when he was at UConn, what was he doing where he was messing up? We don't know because he didn't talk about it. When he was at Florida, Urban Meyer said, we're going to try to keep him from going home because he knows what he's getting into. Well, then why did you let him go home? Where was Tim Tebow? Where were his friends whenever he went to the NFL to check in on him and check him and say, hey, look, don't do this. Learn from your mistakes. And again, he was going into the NFL at 20 years old. And we're seeing not the same thing, but we're seeing similar behaviors with Antonio Brown. And he was coddled.
He was coddled. Really similar, I think.
He was coddled from Central Michigan till he got into the NFL. He was acting a fool in the Steelers. He acted a fool with Oakland. He acted a fool with New England. And then he got kicked out. And it's like, where are your real friends to say, hey, bro, you're misstepping. What's your problem? Let's get you some help. Let's talk about these things. And that's why, I text you, you call me, and we check in, and we see how things are going. And I think that's where after Aaron Hernandez lost his father.
Hernandez, come on.
Hernandez is coming out. After his father left him, and maybe that was his biggest friend, and he didn't have any after that. And here we are.
And
5 years later.
Right. And I think I want to go back to the point of, I thought what was a good point was the brother. But, I want to kind of, play some devil's advocate here with the brother. He might have been not involved because he knew what the potential was for his younger brother. He knew that it was basically a ticking time bomb. And he might not have wanted to be around that. He might not have wanted to be around his mother and father. He might not have wanted to be around his own brother because.
But that's hard to believe because he was at UConn, and that's you can the state university.
You can live in the same house and not be involved with people around you, and it's difficult. But you do that because you don't want to be around that scene, and you pull yourself away, and he might potentially have made his own friends, his own good people, put himself in a good environment. I don't know. We don't know. They didn't really talk about him, besides, that he was, selling his book.
Yeah, his book.
Could be the opposite. He could have been a big part of, the whole downfall and just like the upbringing and the bad environment that Aaron Hernandez grew up in. But it's not like, and that's I think the big picture, the 30,000 foot picture is it doesn't matter how much money you make.
Yep.
As far as the environment in your home, because you can see athletes that come out of single parent homes with, very loving mothers that athlete goes on to be a great NFL player, a great father, a great husband. And you see something similar, or you see something with an Aaron Hernandez who comes out of a 2-parent household,
which wasn't as picture perfect as it may seem. On the outside,
upper middle class. He wasn't hurting, as far as being poor or anything like that. It's about the love in the home. You know what I'm saying? I think that's, we're kind of getting deep here an hour into this episode 46, but it's about the love in the home and how much love is given to those kids, especially when he's a teenager going into the NFL. And, even that one phone call between him and his mother, and she was saying, well, all I needed was $1 million out of that $40 million.
And he's like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
That's what you're saying to me right now.
And that's he's sitting in jail, and his mom is telling him that
this could have been avoided if you would have given me $1 million.
Yeah, there's all this. Yeah, if we could have not been here if you would have given me $1 million of that 40 million. And he just, I think that's kind of the point where he was just like, I can't do this anymore.
Can we all agree though? We all own our own behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all, because I know we'll probably have some older viewers who are maybe in their 50s or 60s and they're saying, man, y'all are talking about feelings and love in the home.
Right.
Where some of these people, they may have never heard that.
No.
And they didn't grow up to be monsters.
No.
We all own our own, we all own our own behaviors,
right,
and our own decisions and our own consequences. But at the end of the day, some people need more and some people need less. And some people are just different.
Yeah. And if you need help, go get it.
That's right.
Recon Athlete will help you.
Yeah. And I'll leave episode 46 with this, man. I go to therapy once a month. 4 or 5 years ago, I started having panic attacks. I started having depression. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, but I go to therapy every month. And when I first started realizing that I was having these feelings and these issues, my father helped me find a therapist. My father helped me through all of this, and my mom, and they both were like, you need to get help. We're here to help you. Mm-hmm. And they helped me, and when I first started going, I was going every week, and every week I was going to therapy. I went through what's called EMDR. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it's for people with PTSD. So I know I've been through this, and I'm going through this now, and so there is so much help out there, and what it takes for the individual, from my experience, is for the individual to say, I can't do this by myself. I need help. There's something wrong with me. I need to go and I need to find out why I'm feeling depressed, why I'm feeling anxious. Depression lives in the past. Anxiety lives in the future. You have to live in the present. So if you really, really are feeling stuff like this, go find you a really good therapist. And I tell people this all the time, even if you don't think you need a therapist,
just having someone to talk to is
you can probably go to therapy. I think this world would be a better place if everybody was open and able to go to a therapist and really just open themselves up and work and exercise your brain. Because when I go to therapy for 75 minutes, I'll eat breakfast, like right before I go. Mm-hmm. And I'll come out of there 75 minutes later starving because I've worked so hard in there, and going through, basically emotional and mental exercises. And it's the one of the things every month that I look forward to is to going into and shout out my therapist, is to go in there and really figure out what's going on in my head. And, it's amazing to me what the change that I seen in myself from 4 or 5 years ago until now. And a lot of people, like, especially people that I work with, that I'm with, that we're the people that you work with
on the daily.
Daily. I've had people tell me, you're completely different now than you from when you started here. Because when I started at Manor ISD was when I started going to therapy. Mm-hmm. And so I've had several people tell me, like, what changed? And I tell them, I started going to therapy. So if y'all need it out there, y'all go get some help.
I just wanted to close on the Aaron Hernandez thing. I think what you just said about the people that really know you are the people you work with because you spend the most time around them. Mm-hmm. I think I would like to see this documentary revisited by like a significant studio, a studio that has weight and money and pressure behind them, because I would like to see them interview Gronk.
Yeah.
I would like to see them interview Urban Meyer. I would like to see them interview the Pounceys. I would like to see them interview Tim Tebow, because anytime he would ever show them, it would show them almost saying no, but they seemed distraught by the situation. Like they didn't want to say something because they had something to say.
Yeah.
So I would, but a Netflix documentary by so-and-so is not going to get Urban Meyer to change his stance on speaking on the situation.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that I think would like really, really shape my opinion on this whole Aaron Hernandez situation. But in my closing question to you guys, so that Florida national championship team, Urban Meyer, who has been in trouble for protecting someone that accused of domestic violence, a coach by the name of Zach Smith, who was a graduate assistant for Florida that year. Cam Newton, who stole laptops and ultimately had a transfer and ended up winning the Heisman Trophy. Aaron Hernandez,
which we know what he did.
Janoris Jenkins, who they found a dead body in his house, who went on to have a pretty successful NFL career.
Still in the NFL.
Right. Riley Cooper, who doesn't like black people. And all led by Tim Tebow. It would never happen because it's too polarizing of a topic. Some of the stuff is still like actively going on. But a lot of people online are saying it would make a good documentary just about that team. I think it would make a good movie.
Yeah.
Like a biopic.
Like just a drama.
Who plays
movie.
Tim Tebow?
You know who would want to play Tim Tebow is Tim Tebow.
Want that check.
All right, Recon Athlete episode 46. Man, we got pretty deep here, y'all. So I hope y'all were interested in
the beginning and the end.
Yeah. And I hope y'all got something out of today's episode. I want to shout out to the people that were joining our watch party. Emo, Paul, Kalunga was on there. Snoop is on the watch party over there on the couch.
Yeah.
Cindy, Hunter, my cousin, and of course Coach Gutman, Howard Gutman. What's up, Coach? All right, let's wrap these things up, fellas. Man, we didn't know what we were going to talk about today.
That was therapeutic.
But that was good. I appreciate it, guy. Appreciate it, fellas. All right, Paul, do your thing.
We're going to do things a little bit different today. Please like, subscribe, and of course, comment down below. But if you need help, we're going to put some information in the link below. So just check it out if you need help. Everybody needs help, and we all love everybody out there. Thank y'all for joining us. We out.